Hello and welcome to Russ's Movie Corner. My name is Russ, and as you can see, I'm sitting in front of my movie corner. I have my Bible the Epic miniseries right here, my Armor of God t-shirt on, which means it's time to take down another atheist. And again on the chopping block is The Truth Hurts. I know I just did a video series on him a couple weeks ago titled Noah's Ark, the story that disproves the Bible, REBUTTAL. This is his video called 5 Animals That Disprove God. This is going to be the last one because we're kind of at the end of this video here. I kind of let him kind of talk, and then I would talk, and then I would let him talk. So I tried to get through most of the video as fast as I possibly could. So now he's going to start getting into his conclusion. That he calls a rational conclusion. As we get into it, you'll see that it's not really rational at all because, again, he misses this third bullet point called justice. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that's the reason why. But as we get into it, you'll see that he's using the typical atheist argument of, oh, the Old Testament God is just this really vengeful, wrathful, slothful tyrant that doesn't really care about us. He just beats us down, because postmodernist hippie bullshit.
As a Christian, I remember being absolutely bamboozled by the fact that people such as Stephen Hawking, Brian Cox, and Sir David Attenborough, very intelligent but also nice individuals, didn't believe in God.
What does nice have to do with anything? Just because you're nice doesn't mean you're a Christian. Doesn't mean that you believe in God. Okay? There are plenty of non-Christians out there that are nice. There's plenty of Christians who are nice. There's plenty of non-Christians who are mean and nasty, and there's plenty of Christians who are mean and nasty. What's your point? You say that as if it's like, oh, they're so nice, I don't know why they want Christians. Well, probably because they believe the same lies you do now.
I mean, David Attenborough, a man who has spent his life studying and researching animals, and yet he doesn't give credit to the designer.
He didn't.
I wasn't the only one who was amazed at this.
I often get letters, quite frequently, of people who say, how they like your programs a lot, but I never give credit to the almighty power that created nature. To which I reply and say, well, it's funny that the people when they say that this is evidence of Almighty, always quote beautiful things. They always quote orchids and hummingbirds and butterflies and roses. But I always have to think too of a little boy sitting on the banks of a river in West Africa who has a worm boring through his eyeball, turning him blind before he is 5 years old. And I reply and say, well, presumably the God you speak about created the worm as well. And I find that baffling to credit a merciful God, that action, and therefore it seems to me safer to show things that I know to be truthful and factual.
So where's the parents? Why does that kid have a worm boring through his eye? Where are the parents that could have warned him that playing with that worm, putting it on his face or whatever? That's a nice story, David Attenborough. I think I said Richard Attenborough. I was confusing the actor with the guy. But David Attenborough, where was the parents of that child? Were they genocided by a maniac? By a warlord who usurped power because of the evil of this world, because of the knowledge of good and evil of the original fall? You claim to say that you want to relate things that are true and factual and truthful, but at the same time, you're discounting the fact that evil exists in the world. And while it is sad that a kid will have a worm boring through his eyeball and he'll go blind before he's 5 years old, to which I reply, where are the parents? To tell him playing with that could be dangerous. That maybe could have stopped him from creating that mess. Were they genocided? Did they die of starvation? What is it? You're not telling me the whole story here. And without the whole story, all that is an anecdotal piece of crap evidence that has no basis on reality because of the fall. It's all explained in Genesis chapter 3. And that's what this guy and Sir David Attenborough and Stephen Hawking and all those guys discount. Is that justice. Now, I'm not saying that kid deserves the worm boring through his skull. But if his parents were murdered by an evil person who desires power like Satan, has believed the lies of the world that power corrupts, and he goes around and kills people, and that child is suffering now because his parents were murdered and they weren't there to tell that child not to play around with that worm. Like I said, it's a good story, but there's a lot more to it that you're not mentioning and that no one else is mentioning, and that is the reason why we have a lot of this kind of crap from people like him that are former Christians, okay? Because they were told lies about God. Lies from people like David Attenborough. Why would a merciful God who created the worm allow that to happen? It's not up to God to save every single human being. Okay? God doesn't have to save every single human being. We have responsibilities as human beings when we raise our children, when we do things. We have responsibilities as parents to make sure that the kids understand boundaries. That there are dangerous things out in this fallen frickin' world because of Adam, because of Eve, because of the serpent.
What he is highlighting is the ubiquitous way in which believers of the world's three major monotheistic religions take the perceived good and give all the credit to God, and then either brush under the carpet the perceived bad, or bring it out and lay it at Satan's door.
Did I lay that at Satan's door? I didn't lay the kid having the worm boring through his eyeball at Satan's door. No. I laid the evil at Satan's door. The original sin, the knowledge of good and evil, that's on Satan. Because he deceived Eve. And they disobeyed. Both Adam and Eve disobeyed. That's on Satan. And he's still doing it. He knows he's lost. He knows his time is limited. And he's running around trying to convert as many people as he can away from Christianity, away from the knowledge that you are safe in Jesus Christ. That you have a refuge. That if you wear this armor that I have on my chest, you wear this armor of God every day of your life, then people like him won't influence you away from that. In fact, I just saw in the comments, because every time I hit Control End, it goes down like, a ways down the page. Okay? And I saw in the comments where some kid was like, hey, good on you, kid. Somebody in the comments was like, hey, good on you, kid. Good on you for what? Taking this list of 5 things and ignoring one of them to make this argument that this postmodernist hippie BS is what God is supposed to be? And ignore the justice of the original sin and the free will that we had to either choose God or not to choose God, and we chose to believe the lies instead of believing in God, and that we're paying the price for that in this fallen frickin' world? Really? Good on you, man. Really? That's what you're gonna say?
That used to be me as well. I would go around on the ministry handing people a copy of the Awake magazine, highlighting the running article, "Was it designed?" The sea otter's fur, was it designed?
Yes.
The butterfly's wing, was it designed?
Yes.
The seahorse's tail, was it designed?
Yes.
Unsurprisingly, there was never the stomach acid of the crocodile, was it designed?
Yes.
The black mamba's fang, was it designed?
Yes.
The venom of the box jellyfish, was it designed?
Yes, it was.
I've come to realise that there are two vastly different approaches to analysing evidence and forming conclusions. There's the scientific approach and the religious approach. The scientific approach, you collate all possible evidence on a topic and form an informed, rational conclusion. The religious approach, you pick and mix which evidence supports your already formed and immovable conclusion.
And yet, you've just done that. You just put the religious approach in this. Okay? Hang on. Damn. Hang on one second. My computer decided to take a dump. My thing fell off and I accidentally hit back and...
For 6 years, I took these notes on to the independent mind.
Okay, let me just keep it right there. He doesn't really say much. He talks about this quote about Christopher Hitchens, but basically, this guy basically did exactly what he said the religious approach is. He pick and mixed certain sources to come to a conclusion about this perceived God over here that he has on this list, okay, ignoring certain bullet points and saying, a God with foreknowledge would never allow this to happen. A God with foreknowledge would never allow this to happen. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at this article on this snake fang. I mean, look at this article on snakes. Oh, they were designed to kill. Oh, but how could God ignore 90% of the article? Oh, but God, would never allow that to happen. Dude, everything you did is that. Everything you did is that.
Religious approach. The scientific approach, you collate all possible evidence on a topic and form an informed, rational conclusion.
The funny thing is, that's exactly what I've done in this video series. I've shown you different translations of the Bible. Okay? I've shown you spots in the Bible where things are located where you can actually look at that and say, yeah, I get that. Okay? I've collected, I looked at this article by Douglas Oliver that he quoted from. Okay? And scrolled down so you could see how much of the article this guy blew by, posted links in the description showing you that this is how we're going to do this. Okay, this is how we're going to look at all these different little parts of it, and we're going to show you how all of this works. I did that. It's funny. I did the scientific approach. And he did this.
The religious approach, you pick and mix which evidence supports your already formed and immovable conclusion.
That's what he's doing. That's exactly what atheists do. They pick and mix every little tiny thing to say, look at how bad God is. Look at how bad God is. Look at how bad God is. And if this was supposed to be a God of love, he wouldn't allow this. That's their already formed conclusion, is that God is an evil, vengeful being if he does exist. And he's literally doing this. He's literally taking the religious approach. What he's telling people is the religious approach. He's literally taking that. He's picking and mixing to make it seem like, oh, see, I'm better than you. Because I don't believe in God anymore. Because this God over here that I have with the love and the kindness and the empathy and the foreknowledge would never allow this stuff to happen. And he blows right by the justice part of it. He blows right by the already inconclusive proof that God said, I will do this because of your sin in Genesis chapter 3. And he's like, well, it's not that way. I know that. The hell, dude? You literally did exactly what you said is religious. And you think that atheism and evolutionism isn't a religion? You literally do what you say is the religious approach to shit. It's hilarious to me that these people think that they've got us. Oh, we got you. Oh, we got you. No, you don't. You have nothing. You have smoke and vapor, and you're holding on to it with two fists, claiming you have the smoking gun. When we're the ones holding the gun and the bullets, and you're holding on to the smoke coming out of the gun saying, see, we got you, woo-hoo-hoo. No, you don't. No, you don't, dude. You don't at all. You are so beyond. Now, I said this before, okay? I said this like a couple videos ago, and I said this in the last one. I'm glad that you got out of Jehovah's Witnesses. They are a cult. They are a cult, and they are very much into the indoctrination and into that. Now, while I say that, they do have some good things. They have done some research, okay, that Christians have used over the years to verify and to get, some of those things out to the public. Some scientific facts. So I will say they have done some good. They go about it in the wrong way, but they have done some good to further the kingdom of God. And I'm glad that this guy got out of it. But what he's traded it for, he has taken something that was semi-tangible and gone to something that's completely intangible. Then he turns around and says, there's the scientific approach, where you sit there and you look at all the evidence and you put it all together and you form a rational conclusion. And then there's a religious approach, where you pick and mix and you do all this stuff, and then you make it so that it's your already formed opinion. And it's funny that when I'm sitting here and I'm showing you, this translation, and I'm showing you this Bible commentary, and I'm showing you different things that are proving the Bible to be true and correct and what it says, okay? And I'm showing you articles where they've talked about this stuff and they've done this different things. I'm the one doing the scientific stuff. And him, in his mind, he's already got that conclusion, that preformed conclusion that he says that the religious people do. And that they pick and mix and put stuff in, which is what he's doing. You got it yet? I hope you do. Because this is something that is really, really important if you're going to be an apologist online. If you're going to do this, you need to understand how these people think. And how he is thinking is wrong. His thinking is completely wrong because he has in his mind a preformed conclusion. And he is using that preformed conclusion to create his own narrative and his own conclusion. He's pick and mixed everything. In fact, if you go back and you start watching my videos from the beginning, you'll see that in the very beginning of the video, if you go actually watch, I'll post the link to his video down below too. It'll be in all the videos. But if you go and watch this whole video yourself, you'll notice that as he gets further and further down, all he says is love, kindness, empathy. Love, kindness, empathy. He'll start out in the beginning saying love, kindness, justice, and empathy. But as he gets further and further into his 5 animals here, okay, he'll get into the bed bugs, and then he'll get into the snakes, and then he'll get into the jellyfish, and then he'll get into the mosquitoes. And by the time he gets to humans, he's completely forgotten justice. And he's like, why would a God want to punish my mom for something that happened, 6,000 years ago in the Garden of Eden? It'd be like me going over here and chopping off some dude's hand in the thing because his 85 great-grandfather committed a sin. Because it's the original sin. And it's because of the severity of the sin. Because God said to Adam, here's all these trees. You see this one right here? This one right here. Don't eat it. You can have every other tree in the garden, but this one. That included the tree of life. Yes, the tree that would have made us immortal. We could have eaten from that tree and been immortal. But we didn't. Okay? He went, no. This tree right here. Don't eat it. That's it. That's all he said. And Satan, in the form of a serpent, went up and went, did God really say? You will surely not die. You'll be like him. You'll be gods. You'll be gods like him. That's the original sin. That is the problem. We are missing the point. Okay? The justice that was put upon the human race was because of that sin. Okay? That we ate from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. And God tried. He tried everything to make people understand that his way was the best way. And nobody wanted to listen. He destroyed the world with a flood. Then he chose a people. And he tried to make those people understand. He gave them a law. Okay? We call it the Pentateuch, which is the first 5 books of the law. Okay? It's also known as the Torah. Okay? Those 5 books right there in the Bible, okay, the Pentateuch, it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Okay? God gave a law to his people, and he was saying, hey guys, you have to understand this law. Okay? And in the book of Genesis, Moses wrote down, here's what you're going to do. Here's why you're where you're at. And then in Exodus, he tells his story of how he was a baby and he was saved and how he was, raised as a prince and how he left because he killed a man in accidental, and then he came back and he was like, all right, I'm going to free my people because they're my people and they're suffering, and God heard their suffering and he wants to save them. And he does, and he gives them this law. And they spent 40 years in the wilderness. Why did they spend 40 years in the wilderness? Would somebody please in the comments below tell the other people why the Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness? It's pretty simple. I believe it's in the book of Leviticus. It's because they got to the promised land, okay? And they sent people into the promised land. And they came back. And because they took one member of each tribe, okay? And they were like, whoa, dude, this place is paradise. It is a land flowing with milk and honey. It's beautiful. There were two men, Joshua, Caleb, okay? And they were like, let's go get this land, man. This is what the Lord wanted. Yeah! But the other 10 went, oh, hell no. Those people are giants, man. We're never going to win. And because of that, because Moses believed them, believed those 10 men over the 2 men, the Lord God punished that generation of people, except for Joshua and Caleb. He said, Moses, you and your generation will not live to see the promised land, because you refused to believe in me. You refuse to believe that I can lead you to victory. You're never going to see the promised land. So they stayed out in the wilderness for 40 years until that generation died off. And then they came back, and they crossed, and they went in, and they did what they were supposed to do, up until about the 3rd or 4th city. Then they started leaving people alive. And God's like, dude, I told you, kill everyone. What the hell is wrong with you? And thus began a cycle. The Israelites, I mentioned the cycle earlier, the Israelites would not do what God wanted to do. They would fall away from God, start worshiping other gods, lower G, and then they would end up enslaved, because they would send a prophet. God would send a prophet, says, hey, you know what? You're going to be enslaved. And then they would cry out to be saved. And then God would rescue them, send them back to the promised land. They would sit there and, yay, we're all great now, and then they would go to drinking and debauchery, and they would start falling away from God again. And thus, the cycle would continue. Until Jesus came, and he said, I am here, I am the fulfillment of the law. He was the sacrificial lamb for all the sins of the world, not just for the Jewish people, but for the Gentiles as well. And that's what you have to understand about the Old Testament. God is love, God is kindness, God is empathy, and yes, God is justice, and that's the justice that is in our fallen world. It's the reason why people act the way they do. If you think a baby is completely innocent when they are born, then you've never actually taken care of a child. Because they will do stuff and then look at you with a smug look on their face. I guarantee you, I have seen it done with my own nephews, okay? When they were babies, when they were toddlers, they would they'd be sitting there playing with a cup or something, and my brother would say, hey, stop that. You're going to spill it. What do? Bink! Then they look at the table. They look at the rest of us. My parents were sitting there, grandparents. My parents, my brother's parents, were sitting around the table, and me, and I'm trying not to crack a smile because it is hilarious. Because that's what they want. They want that satisfaction of doing something that they were told not to do, and then getting away with it. Look at me. No, they didn't get away with it. Why? Because they were punished for that. That's what parents do, and that's what God did. He punished us as a species because we sinned against him. Sorry for that, man.
Christopher Hitchens once said that the essence of the independent mind lies not in what it thinks, but in how it thinks. What is the opposite of an independent mind? A dependent mind. Dependent on your friends, your family, your religious community, your church elders, your church website for the answers to your questions and for the answers to your doubts.
If you are a newer Christian, you're probably going to have a lot of doubts and fears and things. you will need to be dependent for a while. But Paul says that, like a child, I thought like a child, I felt like a child, I spoke like a child, but then I grew up. And so whereas I was having milk, I now eat solid food. And that's the word, okay? That's what he's comparing it to. So now, as an adult, now I think like an adult, I act like an adult, I am an adult. That's how we have to be as Christians. We need to be building up the next generation, okay? Those people that are now coming in as new Christians, doesn't matter what age they are, but when they're new Christians, they're babies. They need to be fed milk. They need to be fed the word in chunks that they can understand, okay? To ease them into it. And then as they grow and as they mature, then they need to understand what the meaning is behind those stories. Why things happen the way they do. Okay? And so as a Christian, you need to be bringing people up like that. From dependency to independency. Because while somebody will have, okay, doubts and fears and stuff like that, you as a Christian can ease their mind. Okay? You can make them understand that this is why this is this way. And when they come to you with questions, you answer those questions. Or you bring them to videos like this, like my videos, where I will explain these kind of things so that they go, hey, wait a minute, that starts to make sense. Now I understand what these people were talking about. Because that's why we're doing what we're doing. Okay? A person that is totally dependent upon religion is using it as a crutch to get through life. But a person who can be independent thinker, okay, and still be a Christian. This guy's trying to make the argument that because he was in the Jehovah's Witnesses, he was a dependent person on his religious community, on his friends, and on his family within the Jehovah's Witnesses to provide him with his answers. And now that he has broken free from the Jehovah's Witnesses, now he has this independent mind over here. Which is not true. He's still dependent. He is now dependent upon the atheists and others who are telling him what he should believe. And he calls it critical thinking, even though he's not really critically thinking. Because he's not thinking things through logically. Like when I was sitting there and he was talking about in the Noah's Ark video where an elephant eats like 600 pounds of food, so they would have needed for like the whole year, they would have needed like 220,000 pounds of food or something like that. So they would have had to build Noah's Ark 2 to make it just for the food so that they could put, the animals on Noah's Ark 1, and they would have had to lash them together so that they could, transfer food. And I'm like, why couldn't they have juveniles? Juveniles don't eat as much as a thing. And it was so funny because when I mentioned that, people were like, wait, what? No, you can't. No, that's not how that works. And I put up a video, and I put in there, I said, if you go back and watch this one video, like it was like later on, it was like video 5. I was like, if you go back and you watch this one video, you will see that video basically says, here's this. It basically said that there was probably juveniles on the ark. And in the ark experience, the actual place in Kentucky where Ken Ham built the ark, he literally says the cages were probably small and they probably had juvenile animals on the ark. So I'm not the only one that thought out the problem and went, maybe we're not reading the whole story because, it's like God is just telling the story to Moses and Moses is writing it down. And he probably didn't mention, hey, these animals were juveniles. But if you really think about it, if you have a certain space, and space is a premium, you're probably not going to bring fully grown elephants onto the ark. Weight restrictions, that kind of stuff. You wouldn't bring a fully grown T-Rex onto the ark, for goodness sake. Okay? You wouldn't bring a fully grown hippopotamus onto the ark. You wouldn't bring a fully grown Brachiosaurus. None of that. Okay? But that's what I mean by critical thinking. This guy is using critical thinking as a buzzword to get people to not believe in God, because if you believe in God, you're not critically thinking. Do you get that now? Every time he says critically thinking, it is a dog whistle for atheists to say, ha, he's now critically thinking, dude. Oh, he's not religious anymore because he's critically thinking like the rest of us. No, he's not. He's not critically thinking at all because he's not thinking. He's just regurgitating what he's heard from other atheists. And that's all they do. They're backslappers. Like I said at the beginning of the video, when I saw this guy, was like, good on you, son. Really? Good on you that you left the Jehovah's Witnesses, but not good on you for not believing in God. Okay? Because the evidence is right there in front of your face. Let's finish this and then I'll wrap this up.
But you may know by now that that is not a reliable and accurate pathway to truth. The key to escaping that mindset is developing the cognitive ability to think critically for yourself.
Did you catch that? The key to breaking this mindset is to develop the ability to the cognitive ability to critically think for yourself. I think for myself. I'm still a Christian. Does that mean that I'm not thinking critically? No. I'm thinking critically. He's not. But see, he's got this idea planted in his head by other atheists, and by Satan by extension, okay, that God doesn't exist. And if you believe that God exists, then you're stuck in this religious rut, and the only way to get out is to think critically.
Deciphering between true and false with what you've been indoctrinated to believe without question. This was the topic for me, which after my cognitive dissonance built, eventually imploded my faith. Against all that my heart wanted to be true, I had to be intellectually honest and conclude that it was an impossibility for this God to exist.
It is an impossibility for that postmodern hippie bullshit God to exist. Because he doesn't exist. The God that exists is that third bullet point. Yes, he has love. Yes, he has kindness. Yes, he has empathy. Yes, he has foreknowledge. But above all, he has justice. Do you think that a just God would just allow sin to just enter into the world and him be like, whatever, dude. Screw it. No! Why would a loving, kind, empathetic God allow sin to exist without some form of punishment? Answer me that, atheists. Come on, right down there in the comments. Answer me that.
But even as an atheist, hypothetically, just imagine you get the opportunity to have a one-on-one conversation with this God. What would you say? Stephen Fry certainly doesn't mince his words.
How dare you? How dare you create a world in which there is such misery that is not our fault? It's not right. It's utterly, utterly evil. Why should I respect a capricious, mean-minded, stupid God who creates a world which is so full of injustice and pain? Why did you do that to us? You could easily have made a creation in which that didn't exist. It is simply not acceptable.
He did. Right there. He did. We fucked it up. We did. Yeah, I'm becoming a Bible thumper. Because I'm making these people understand. You're putting your anger in the wrong place. It belongs at Satan's feet, not God's. God created the tree of good and evil, the knowledge of the good and evil, and he told his free-thinking, free-will human beings, don't touch it. And we did. As I asked just seconds before, What kind of a God, a loving, kind, justice thinking, empathetic God would allow sin to just roam unchecked? I'll tell you what God does that. A God of lies, deceit, and vanity. Satan. That's where you put your anger. You put it at Satan's feet, not God's, because it's not God who put it there. It's Satan. And it's us. We did the evil. Does Stephen Fry think that he was just an innocent little child? I would love to know his upbringing. I would love to know how he was brought up by his parents. I really would. I would love to know how he was brought up by his parents into thinking that he thinks that he is so innocent that God is punishing him for no reason at all. What kind of a backwards ass fucking thought is that? Fuck me. This is beyond cognitive dissonance at this point. It is so the mental gymnastics required to get to that level of vanity and narcissism to think that you are above everyone, including the God who created the universe, into thinking that you have no sin in your life, no shame, no guilt, no nothing. You've never told a lie, you've never done anything in your life, that you are absolutely perfect, that you are above the God of the universe who created you in your mother's womb, knit you together in your mother's womb. Psalm 139. Bullshit. The level of cognitive dissonance and mental gymnastics required to get to that level of narcissism is beyond the pale. Satan has wrapped himself so tight around Stephen Fry, and by extension people like Richard Dawkins who do the same damn thing, to believe that God is a vengeful tyrant who doesn't care about his people. How dare you? How dare you even think that you are above the God of the universe? The God who created you. You aren't. You aren't even close.
Based upon the world around us, if a singular supernatural creative agent was to exist, both Stephen Fry and I are united in what that God would be like. And it would be the exact antithesis of this.
Because the God who created this universe, if it was created by God, is quite clearly a maniac. Utter maniac.
A God who gets an addictive thrill from witnessing pain, suffering, and death. A God who delights in bloodshed. The planet that we call home would in fact be this God's Colosseum. In the 500 years of Colosseum activity in Rome, it's estimated around 400,000 people lost their lives. Here, in God's Colosseum, billions upon billions of humans have died, and countless trillions of animals have lost their lives. As a species, we were thrust naked and ignorant into a global amphitheatre. Like gladiators, we have had to form our own armour, our own defence against countless animals, but most notably and most importantly, each other. If this God does exist, we should not attempt to pray to it, to appease it, or to please it. If it can see us, if it can hear us, we should throw our swords into the crowd and ask, "Are you not entertained?"
That's because that God that you speak of doesn't exist except in your mind. Because Satan put it there. The God that I worship is a loving, kind, just, empathetic, omniscient, omnipresent God. And it pains him every time a human being picks up a weapon and kills another human being. It pains him every time a child goes hungry. It pains him every time because the people are not blaming the right one. They're not blaming the God of the earth. They're blaming the God of the universe. People like you are blaming the wrong God. And it's time for you to stop. Because the God that I worship does care about you, does want you with him in heaven, and does want you to worship him and him alone. But not without cost. Because this hippie bullshit, this postmodernist hippie bullshit needs to stop. It can't go on. And we're done. Thank God. This guy, the amount of cognitive dissonance and mental gymnastics required to get to this level of thinking is beyond the pale. Because that's not a rational conclusion. It has nothing to do with rationality. It has everything to do with grabbing smoke. And with thinking that you're grabbing on to knowledge. Which is all science is. To gain knowledge. That's all science means. To gain knowledge. Science and religion are not incompatible. Because the God of the universe who created this universe, and he does exist, is not a mean, vengeful person. He is very loving, he is very kind, but he cannot tolerate sin in his presence. As I stated in a video or two ago, where if you were to literally stand in the presence of God, it would physically burn you because of the sin in your life. He won't suffer. That's why you have to have Jesus in your life. Jesus is the reason he's here. He came down and he died for us. If you want to know more, get your Bible, read John chapter 3. In fact, just read the whole book of John. Then when you're done, go back and read the book of Genesis. Because you need to understand the God of both the Old Testament and the New Testament, to understand that the God of the Old Testament is not vengeful and wrathful. He is a father trying to discipline his children. And they won't listen. So he sent his son. And his son has even more commandments for us now than before. It is not an easy walk. Smash that like button. Hit subscribe. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you thought of the series. And I have some ideas for some of the stuff going on. Again, I have all these movies. I do need to get to them. I will be getting to them here in a little bit. I have another project in the works as well. I was actually in the process of writing kind of a little bit of a script, a little bit of an outline for it. And then this popped up in my feed, so I thought, it is time to make this, because when I heard some of the stuff that he said in that conclusion, I was like, dude, you are putting your blame in the wrong spot. You are blaming the wrong entity. And because of that, I needed to make this video series, because I needed to make sure that people understood that Christians aren't discounting this stuff. We're just saying that, yeah, it's adaptation to the fallen world. That's what all these animals are. It's adaptation to a fallen world. And what has happened is that we have taken our knowledge of good and evil and we have perverted it to the point where we are now saying that it is better to blame the God of the universe, the creator God, than the God of the world, the father of lies, Satan. So, keep it locked here for Russ's Movie Corner, and I will see you on the next one.